welcome to Get Over It, the consciousness transforming podcast for exceptional 21st century living. We've got a very unique show today. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Alexandra Chauran, and we're talking about her book, Getting Through It, Reclaim and Rebuild Your Life After Adversity, Change, or Trauma. And since I'm all about getting over it, and she's about getting through it, you guys are going to get some good information to shift your life so that you can truly live the life you were meant to live and not be stuck in the mire that we sometimes get stuck in. Now, the information shared on Get Over It uses intuitive and pragmatic insight to help you shift your consciousness to break through blocks and release energy that is no longer needed. Yes, we're going to help you let go of the BS that is holding you back. But I always ask, are you truly ready to? And by the way, folks, BS is belief. For my new listeners, intuitive since birth, I'm a third generation intuitive with over 3 decades of experience supporting people to break through the blocks along their path. I'm a strategist for personal and professional transformation, revealing cutting edge information that enables you to prosper and thrive. I spent 25 successful years in corporate America as an executive sales professional, and I'm the founder of Healing Visions Ministries and the Northern California Children's Education Network, a 501c3 nonprofit. I provide consultations and healings in all areas of life that heal the mind, body, spirit connection, allowing you to live your very best life. My clients tell me that I keep it real while providing them with accurate information to assist them along their journey as a spirit living a human existence. But they also say, if you really don't want to know, don't ask Monique. My background includes a doctorate in metaphysics, Reiki master teacher, ordained minister, and clinical hypnotherapist. So whether you are stressed, depressed, or possessed, I can help. To find out more about me and the services I offer, go to my website, and that's moniquechapman.com. And I invite you to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. My guest today, Dr. Alexandra Chauran of Port Moody, British Columbia, Canada, is a cancer survivor and the queen of the coven. She has helped thousands around the globe to find confirmation and empowerment through cultural fortune telling practices. That sounds really interesting, folks. Holding a master's in teaching from Seattle University and a doctoral degree from Valdosta State University, she has written over 26 published books. And her thing is to help people, move through life and guide readers through crisis and get to a point of self-discovery. You can check her out at her social media outlet, and that is www, of course, twitch.tv/Queen of Diamonds. Again, twitch.tv/Queen of Diamonds. Welcome, Alexandria.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It sounds like you make such great, necessary content for the world.
I think you do too. We're kind of on the same path, just phrasing it a little bit differently. I absolutely love the title, Getting Through It. In today's world with everything going on, boy, you thought after the Trump years things would calm down. But, we're still in this, like what I call firestorm, and people are so, or at least the people that call me, they're saying they're so depressed. Have you noticed that out there in the world?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, so many people have been through so much trauma and crisis state and everything all through the pandemic, and they haven't had time to sit with it and get over it, right?
Or and then get through it, I mean, or maybe you get through and then you get over. But people seem to be stuck. We're stuck in looking at social media, which is, in my opinion, kind of crazy right now because you're getting all different types of viewpoints on one hand, which is good, but on another hand, if you're not an independent critical thinker, it can really trip you up. People's health seems to be going sideways. What is the one thing that you could share with the audience right now that, like, I'm completely blitzed out? In fact, when you came online, I was talking to my sister who was having a meltdown moment. What can you tell people who are at that point where it's just like, I don't know what to do because everything seems to be broken all at once?
I think that, trying to reduce it to a single bit of advice would probably be to just not avoid dealing with the
Mm.
problems. I think so many people work so hard to try to, if they've got their cart of life tipped over, they work so hard trying to right that cart, and sometimes it's just broken and you have to deal with it and move forward. And it's so hard. So many people fight the process of change when
Mhm.
there's no avoiding it, and so the sooner you deal with things head on instead of distracting yourself with social media or potentially turning to substances to abuse
Mhm.
to turn off those feelings, the more you avoid it, the worse it becomes. So facing those things head on seems like the best thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting because in your book you talk about stop avoiding solutions. Not,
Yeah.
and how can we get to the solution or think about a solution when we're like, I don't know what to do.
Right. I have a preteen right now. My daughter's a
Oh,
preteen and she loves being mad, and we talk about that. When you're angry, it's a protective emotion, right? When you're
mhm.
freaking out and you're angry, sometimes you're protecting fear. And so what you're doing is sometimes you just avoid all those calming down techniques that are going to work, right? Like taking deep breaths, maybe saying a prayer, whatever works for you. You actively avoid it because feeling angry feels a whole lot better than addressing that fear. So I think part of it is doing that positive self-talk when you're not all worked up, and helping yourself remember those strategies while you're in a relatively clear state of mind, so that next time you're triggered and you get yourself all worked up, you're more likely to move towards one of your healthy coping strategies.
Do we have one? Yes, there are many healthy and coping strategies out there. Well, when you're reading your book, getting through it, it seems like you really address people going through the grief process because, in a sense, change could be akin to going through grief because a lot of people don't want to change, and then they're grieving over the change, and they don't necessarily embrace something new. Does that make sense to you
Yeah,
or no?
definitely. In fact, most people know if they go to a therapist, sometimes you'll get a little quiz that they give you, and they'll ask you questions like, how many of these big changes have you gone through? Have you gone through a change in housing? Have you gone through a change in job? Have you lost a loved one? And what they're doing is they're adding up these losses because grief
Mhm.
kind of compounds itself and it becomes worse the more changes or losses that you experience in a short period of time. And so it's this whole pandemic has caused a lot of loss for people. Plenty of
Mhm.
people have had to change their living space, have had to change their job, have lost a loved one, and so this grief adds up.
It definitely adds up, and then when I think even losing our lifestyle, to
Yeah.
a degree, because depending on where you are, you may be in or out or a hybrid of whatever as far as being at home all the time or working
Yeah.
from home. But I think people really miss, getting out there. And to me, that's evidence as, when they lifted certain things, people are just out in mass and then COVID, came back to get us a little bit more. So how can we adjust to what is our new normal? Everybody's talking about, oh, let's go back to the way things were pre-COVID. And those days are gone, folks. If you haven't realize that not happening. So how can we adjust to what our new normal is? And right now, today is our new normal. Now it can change, right? It can get better or worse, but isn't this our new normal right now, today that we're dealing with, and not maybe what's going to happen 6 months from now?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there with focusing on the present moment. Sometimes we're focused on the past and wanting to get back to the way things used to be, or we're
Mhm.
focused on fearing the future and how am I going to get all my ducks in a row to make things work again. And we forget that in this present moment, maybe things are okay, right? Maybe we have a roof over our head and we're warm from the storm. Maybe we've got food available to us, counting those small blessings and really leaning into them in the present moment is the first step towards accepting that new normal, even if it feels so distasteful to accept that new normal.
Well, you make the limit, the old thing, the lemonade out of the lemons, and it can be, challenging sometimes, but it's about, I think, opening your mindset to, expand more, which your book walks us through step by step on what to do. Now, in the book, you talk about this, and it struck me pretty vividly. Um, Paying attention to your thoughts. Now, folks, of course, negative thoughts are not a good thing, but Alexandria puts a premium on your thoughts, especially before bedtime. Why?
Because we definitely spend a lot of time distracting ourselves during the day. And I'm sure everybody's had this feeling where you've had a really busy day, you are working, you've got this and that to do with your family. And then the first time you have to yourself is when you lay down in bed at night. And so what does your brain do? Immediately, it starts chewing through all of this negativity that you haven't been dealing with during the day. And so what I encourage is for people to make space during the day to really sit with their feelings. Sometimes that can look different for different people. Like for me, it's going for a run. I really love going for a run.
Mhm.
Don't put my headphones on, just really let myself chew through all the thoughts that I really need to think through. Because if you don't give yourself that space during the day through meditation or just sitting with a cup of tea and thinking to yourself, then that's going to come up at night, right when you need your sleep.
Mhm. And then you take it a step further and you go into judgment of self and judgment of others. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, judgment is so tough. We like to say that all feelings are good. That's the new thing in therapy, right? Is that we don't need to avoid our feelings, but there are certain feelings that aren't really emotions. They are judgments. Feelings
Mhm.
like shame and even fear can sometimes be harmful to us, whereas other feelings that we think are harmful, like anger, are
Mhm.
actually natural and they have to occur. And so I think these self-judgment pieces can come hand in hand with shame. And sometimes it feels good to be ashamed. Now that might seem weird, but it can give you a sense of responsibility, which might make you feel like you're more empowered, right? If you
Okay.
say, oh, I'm bad, I did the bad things in life, and this is why bad things are happening to me, then that gives you a sense of power because you can say, well, maybe I'll just stop being bad and then life will be good. But the self judgment is not great in this context because there's so much in life that's not our control and not in our purview, and that needs to be acknowledged and released in order to move forward.
How do we, excuse me, acknowledge it? Yes. How do we release it? Once we acknowledge, if we can be brave enough to acknowledge, how can we begin to
Yeah,
let go?
sometimes it takes a few steps to get there. Those 12-step programs, that's
Mhm.
why they're so useful, is they break down those limiting belief systems into smaller chunks, like one of the steps is, to acknowledge that you're not in control. But before you get to that step, you have to become ready to acknowledge that you're not in control, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's funny because I went through those steps myself where at one point I was not ready to acknowledge that I wasn't in control,
Mhm.
but I was able to acknowledge tiny bits of that. I was able to say, okay, well, maybe I'm not in charge of everything, right? And maybe I don't control everything. And that was like a little baby step towards
Mhm.
saying, okay, yeah, there's a lot in life that I can't control and I need to acknowledge that fully. But it took me a while to get there. I had to take those baby steps, and I think a lot of
Mhm.
people do.
Well, why can't we just go with the flow?
Right? Why can't we just go with the flow? I feel like when we were children, it was easier, right? Because you felt
Mhm.
like there was someone in the driver's seat.
Mm.
And now you have to kind of be your own inner parent, right? You have to be that mom in the driver's seat saying, okay, everything's okay. My higher self, my higher power has got this.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Folks, we're speaking with Dr. Alexandra Chauran. We're talking about her book, Getting Through It, Reclaim and Rebuild Your Life After Adversity, Change, or Trauma. Now, a lot of things that are coming up right now, especially for ladies that I get calls from, is they're going through a divorce and they are nasty. They are drag nasty. I mean, it's long periods of time, and whatever was love way back when has turned into, I don't even know if it's hate. Is there something worse than hate? How can we get through the emotions, the cycles of divorce and still come out on the other side, especially when we feel that we're being cheated?
Oh boy, I hear that. I went through just the most brutal divorce, and it was long, it took a
Mm-hmm.
year, and it involved so much, custody battle and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. I think you're right that the love can transform into something toxic.
Mm.
And what I found helped me is trying to take that love and transform it into a healthy love, like a respect for my children's father,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing that love to still exist. I think so many people try to just kill the love because it's hurtful, it's so painful, a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is to try and block the feeling, kill the love. And I think that that's counterproductive in a lot of situations, especially if there are kids involved, because then that toxic feelings, spills over into their lives. And that's horrible.
Yeah.
So, love is a powerful thing, and it doesn't need to be destroyed, even if, the person has done unspeakable things. It doesn't mean you have to take the person back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what it does mean is you have to transform that love into something healthy. And that takes work.
Mm-hmm. It truly does. And we, we're here at Earth School to work on ourselves. So,
Mhm.
it all can be a lesson. Now, in the book, you talk about comparison being the thief of joy. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's really easy for us all to compare ourselves to others. I mean, the social media is that great example of that. We see somebody
Mm.
posting their perfect life on Instagram, and we think, "Oh man, why is my life not like that? Why am I not as good as that person at fitness or motherhood or what else?"
Mm-hmm.
And it happens with all kinds of other things too, though. Even there's almost like a competitiveness with negativity too sometimes. If you're going through a really tough problem like a divorce or like a serious illness, sometimes you start comparing yourself to somebody else who's gone through it and
Mm-hmm.
who had a harder time than you, and yet they're succeeding, whereas you're feeling like you're behind them in some way. And it's just important to really acknowledge that each person's journey is their own. And
Mm-hmm.
we all come into our lives with different lenses that we view things through and different resources available to us.
Okay. Well, then, going through all of that, why are we so lucky to be in limbo?
Yes. I think that in ancient times, people would often go and seek their fortune, right? They would go out into the world, and maybe they'd go on a vigil or a shamanic journey if they were going through some mental illness or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would come out of that shamanic journey feeling transformed. Well, nowadays, you got to be rich in order to do that most of the time, right? It's like
Yes, uber rich. Yes.
exactly. Like I would really love to, take a year off and just go live in the woods in a cabin by the lake and find myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a thing that most of us can do. So when we're forced to put our lives on hold, it's hard to find an appreciation for that, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you're forced to just give up on a lot of projects because something happened that rocked your world, it can feel very frustrating. But if we can lean into those moments, I think a lot of people found that during the pandemic is life slowed down a little bit, and that was
Mm-hmm.
frustrating, but there
Mm-hmm.
was some blessings that came along with that. And now that life is somewhat back to normal, we can see that. We can see some of the positive things that we had that are now no longer a thing because life is getting back to normal.
Yeah, I mean, even Mother Earth is like, well, you gave me a reprieve for a minute. Why can't you just back up to, not putting so much out there, polluting the air?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, it was quiet. We could actually see the skies. I'm in Northern California, not too far from the fires. And even
Mm.
though I'm like an hour away, we still get the smoke. And it's like,
Yeah, exactly. Like we took a step back and the
Mhm.
earth had a moment to heal, and now it's just back to the grindstone.
Yeah, and I don't have the way to fix it. Maybe you do, but or if any of the listeners chime in, we would love to hear from you
Yeah.
regarding that. Now, in your book, you talk about a subject that really came home to me, and that's choosing acceptance of life. And folks, it's not about, I want to live. It's about accepting your circumstance. About 3 years ago, I had a situation where I had to use and still do use a mobility device. And someone, when I was out and about, they said to me, I had to use that and I wouldn't leave the house. And I was like, why? I still want to live and do things. I just need a little bit of help. So talk to us about accepting some of the what we other people might consider horrific or we might even consider horrific and still living because if you're breathing, you might as well enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard being different. And I really identify with what you said. I have a cancer support group, and there was one woman who didn't want to come to cancer support group because she had a colostomy bag, And it's
Hmm.
funny because it's a cancer support group, right? We were all kind of misfits with broken bodies. So a colostomy bag would be no big deal among
Exactly.
us, right? But she didn't want to leave her house because she had a colostomy bag.
Oh.
And it's so, yeah, it's sad how we will often treat people as pariahs who are different. And embracing those differences can be really tough, especially for people who are in the majority. They're not part of a minority community. So it's their first time dealing with being different.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's something that people need to come to accept on their own terms. And sometimes finding a community is a part of that, finding people who are struggling with the same thing you are.
Well, do you find that sometimes when we can't accept something for ourselves, it's really a judgment that we have against other people that are
Oh,
going through that?
definitely. I used to judge people who got divorces.
Hmm.
Honestly, I was just like, well, why can't they just work through their differences, And I thought,
Hmm.
oh God, the kids have horrible lives. They have to go to two different houses. How awful. And I would kind of judge those people
Hmm.
internally. I thought there's always some way that you can work things out. And I had to go through it myself and realize that no, there are definitely situations I'm not in control of.
Yeah.
And it was tough. I felt like I was joining a community that I had once judged, and
Hmm.
it was kind of difficult. I had to eat a lot of crow and realize that people are people.
Yes, they are. I had a client once and haven't heard from her in a minute, but she hated people who wore wigs. I mean, I don't know what her thing was, but she just, and she would talk about it all the time. And you know what? She lost all of her hair and now she's wearing a wig and she doesn't have cancer or anything like that. Okay. Her hair just went away. And then the last time I talked to her, she says, okay, I get it now. I was in such judgment about people wearing wigs for no reason. I was blessed with the opportunity to learn how to wear one. So, sometimes we should be careful with what we project, onto others. Now, one
Yeah.
concept You talk about in your book, which I find fascinating, is clutter. And it's not just the physical clutter. We could talk about the physical clutter, and let's talk about mind clutter too.
Yeah. I actually have another book that's focused on that called Clearing Clutter that I
Okay.
wrote. And it's
Uh-huh.
focused specifically on, both the physical clutter, but also mental clutter. I mean, we all have cluttered minds nowadays, especially with the amount of multitasking we're expected to do. Half of us have email inboxes just stuffed with virtual things to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those virtual things to do really pile up, especially for women, since women are often expected to kind of be the cruise director of the family's life, right?
Yes.
It's women who
Yes.
are in charge of setting the dentist appointment for the kids and everyone else, and all of that stuff. And that mental work adds up and it's not acknowledged properly as the work that it is. And so clearing some of that clutter from your brain is important. And sometimes that means delegating it to other people.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Lastly, I want to talk about the G word, and that's grief. Back in August, one of my brother-in-laws, my husband has 10 sisters and 10 brothers. So the baby brother out of all of them passed away. And it
Yeah.
was very traumatic, very painful, a lot of grief. Talk to us how we can get through a traumatic event, how we can work through the grief process, because it's not just saying, okay, I'm done grieving now, because
Yeah.
there's no specific time limit on it, or even the
Yeah.
way you grieve.
Yeah. And it's so funny because our society is just like, oh, yeah, come back to work on Monday after losing somebody that you love the
Yeah,
next, the last
yeah,
week.
your mother died on Friday, but be here Tuesday morning at 9.
Exactly. And I think that part of that is addressing our own feelings of mortality. There's so much that comes with grief. You have to mourn not only, just missing the person and not being able to talk to them, but also you have to mourn the person they could have become, their future,
Mhm.
everything. And that's big. That's huge. It takes
Yeah.
time. And I think, and direct confrontation of those feelings needs to occur. And everyone needs to recognize that you're, like you said, it's not on a timeline that makes any kind of sense. My dad died like 12 years ago and I can still just burst into tears if I hear a song when I'm in the
Mhm.
mood, right? And
Yeah.
and you have to release that judgment, release that pressure from society to conform to this idea of this resilient person, because that's not true resilience. To avoid the feelings is not true resilience. True resilience means doing the work. Sometimes that work means having a therapist. Sometimes that work means making great art. But doing the work is resilience.
Okay, got to do that work. Now, when we go to your social media site, twitch.tv/Queen of Diamonds, what are we going to find there?
Oh yeah, that's my pandemic stress relief has been playing poker games and chatting over a game of cards online with people. I even did the book release on Twitch and I gave away some
Cool.
copies of the book and it was
Uh-huh.
great. And on
Oh,
Mondays, I typically do like a motivation Mondays kind of stream where I talk about, what motivates people and what you can do to get out of your own way, just like you talk about here, removing
uh-huh.
obstacles and barriers. And honestly, I play a game of cards because that game, just like in life, you can do everything right in a game and still lose.
Uh-huh.
And but we're so much more resilient when we play games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we understand those things. We understand in the game when we're not in control, whereas in real life, that can be so much harder to acknowledge. And
Yeah.
so, So maybe get out there and play some games too, people.
That would be fun. But folks, go to her media site. She is funny. Okay. It's hard for me to laugh if you're not funny. I will go to comedy shows and sit there and like, and when are you going to say something funny? But she made me laugh right off. And if you can make me laugh, you're funny, because I don't laugh that easily at, like
Thank you.
stuff.
Comedy writing has also been a big outlet for me, for sure.
Mhm.
I work with an organization called Stand Up for Mental Health, and they do stand-up comedy to benefit mental health. And
Hmm.
learning to laugh at your problems can be one way to reframe them.
Yeah, and it's so much lighter. And, on those days when you're not feeling it because of whatever issue you're going through, you can
Yeah.
remember something funny around it. Um, Before we go, why don't you share with us a pearl of wisdom for our audience, something that we can hang on to, work with, and take forward with us?
I think I'd like to share that being a strong person feels just like being a weak person. The only difference is that you don't give up.
I like that. Short, sweet, to the point. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Folks, we've been speaking with Dr. Alexandra Chauran. Her book, Getting Through It, Reclaim and Rebuild Your Life After Adversity, Change, or Trauma, available everywhere. It's a short, easy read. It's quick, packed full of information. If you're a slow reader, you could read it in 2 days, okay? But more importantly, it's not about reading the words, it's about doing the book. She gives you many exercises that you can pick and choose from to help yourself. And guess what? Only you can help you. So do check her out on her media site. Do get the book. It's a self-help book that doesn't read self-helpy, if you will. So, Alexandria, thank you for being with us today. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And to the audience, thank you for being with us. I truly appreciate your time and your attention, and I'm honored that people listen to me. It blows me away. And remember that the most important choice that you can make is what you choose to make important. Consider making the masterful choice of getting through it. Abundant blessings, life, love to all. Agape.